Hey, Michael Dermer here. I'm the founder and CEO of The Lonely Entrepreneur. For those of you who don't know the story of how The Lonely Entrepreneur got started, I started my career as a mergers and acquisitions lawyer in New York City, working for this great law firm, Wilkie Farr and Gallagher. And I literally stumbled upon and started the first company in the US to reward people for being healthy. I was out to dinner with some friends, and one of my friends' wives said, "Hey, do you realize for every 10 women that don't follow their prenatal care, it costs the healthcare system $1 million?" And then one of my friends said, "Well, wait a minute. If it really costs the healthcare system $1 million for 10 women, why don't they just pay the 10 women $10,000? And kind of forgot about it. And then a day or two later, I was in my 20s, went back to my law firm and kind of knocked on the door of a healthcare partner and said, "Hey, we have this idea." He goes, "Yep." He goes, "We know exactly what we want to get people to do in healthcare. We just can't get them to do it. And if you could use rewards to do it, the system could literally save billions." So that was it. 6 months later, left my prestigious law job for a basement and started the first company in the US to reward people for being healthy. We struggled early. People hated the idea. People said we're never going to reward people for being healthy. We battled, scrapped, and clawed. And then after about 2 years, we really took off, growing to about 800 employees. And we were in the hockey stick of growth and got offered a lot of money to sell the company. We were like, why would we sell now? And this was in 2007. And then a year later in 2008, the financial crisis hit. And the company was probably worth nothing. And we spent the next 3 years battling, scrapping, and clawing, literally working 20-hour days for 3 years to try to save what we spent 10 years to build. What we like to say is, what took us 10 years to build almost got destroyed in 10 days. And that was really the case. And so we battled, scrapped, and clawed, and was very fortunate to come out the other end and got approached on the other end of the financial crisis. Everybody was interested in healthcare. We got approached and we got bought and had a nice exit, and everything worked out great. And then, after I sold that company, I was in New York City where I've spent most of my adult life. And the only thing I was doing was helping entrepreneurs for fun and friends. And one of them said to me, being an entrepreneur is really lonely. And I forgot about it. And a couple weeks later, I was walking down the street with a friend of mine and I said, "Lonely entrepreneur." And he said, "What'd you say?" And I said, "Lonely entrepreneur." He goes, "What is that?" "It's brilliant." I go, "What do you mean? It's nothing. It's a phrase." He goes, "Are you kidding me? That says it all." And he goes into Starbucks and he goes, "Watch this." And he screams at the top of his lungs, "Who here is a lonely entrepreneur?" And I don't know if everybody did, but it certainly seemed like everybody put their hand up. And that was it. I realized that, there were all these incredibly talented and passionate people in a place like New York City where all of these efforts were not turning into success. And I was like, if you could wake up and do anything every day, which I was fortunate enough I could do, boy, wouldn't it be great to do that? So I said, okay, why are so many people struggling? And I started to look around in the United States at the quote-unquote ecosystem designed to help and support entrepreneurs. And this was very well-intentioned, the ecosystem, but candidly hodgepodge of small business development center and chamber of commerce and incubator and accelerator and university program. It was all kind of disjointed and not particularly modernized. And, we said to entrepreneurs, right? And I think this is really something, a disservice we did to entrepreneurs. We said to entrepreneurs out there, we said, as long as you have passion and a good idea, you're good. Think about that. Like, as long as you have passion and a good idea, you're good. In no other profession would we do that. Imagine this. Imagine if you were, somebody said, "I'm going to do heart surgery." And if somebody said, "Well, did you go to medical school?" No, but I'm passionate about it. And people would say things like, "Well, just fail fast," right? Things they say to entrepreneurs. And I was just really struck by the fact that we basically said to entrepreneurs, you don't have to learn any foundations, right? As long as you have passion idea, you could just let her rip and go do it and go play in traffic. And I thought that was such a disservice for a country that is so dependent on small businesses. So much of our employment, our local communities, and so many of our jobs are created by entrepreneurship. The ecosystem that was set up, if you want to call it that, was very well intentioned. But it just wasn't set up for a modern society. Maybe it was set up when 1 of 1,000 people would be entrepreneurs, but now, 55% of people want to start their own businesses, and 62% of high school kids want to start their own businesses, right? So I was just really struck by the fact that we had not created an ecosystem for entrepreneurs. We had just basically said to people, go let her rip, go play in traffic. And that's really why we wanted to start The Lonely Entrepreneur. We really said to ourselves, why isn't there a one-stop shop for entrepreneurs? It didn't exist, and it should have existed for many, many years, and that's why we built the learning community, the first, kind of one-stop shop for entrepreneurs. But really, my message to you is, for you and for people that are starting businesses or in your businesses today, right? Of course, you need passion and grit and a good idea, but that's what you need just to get on the ride, right? You actually have to learn, just like any other discipline, any other profession, right? You wouldn't say, hey, I'm going to go drive a car and I've never driven a car before. You'd probably learn how to, use a brake and use a steering wheel and maybe how to parallel park a little bit. We never said to people that you have to learn certain foundations, right? Certain foundations of what it takes to be an entrepreneur. We talk all the time about, the big 5 foundations, like what's your goal, what's your financial plan, what's your go-to-market, especially have you found a playground where nobody else is playing, right? What are your key priorities, and obviously these are foundational things that we think that everybody has to learn, right? To have a chance of success as an entrepreneur. So our mission is, we like to say we're all lonely entrepreneurs. There's a reason for that, right? Because there's so much we need to know, right? And so few people that we can trust. And I think that, shame on us both here in the United States and in other places as well, that we haven't really created, the ecosystem to support entrepreneurs and to say to people, right, there's actually some stuff you need to know. And that is really our mission at The Lonely Entrepreneur. If there's ever anything we can do, we've got a whole bunch of free products and services, and obviously we've got our learning community, which is really designed to be the first one-stop shop for entrepreneurs, where it's got learning and coaching and a place to get your questions answered. We've got our Sidekick one-on-one consulting practice. For those of you that are further along, this is for folks that are, $5 to $25 million in revenue who, these CEOs and founders need a sidekick, a right hand that they can turn to from pretty much, everything they need. So just remember, whether it's you or people that always challenge people to say, listen, passion, grit, and a good idea is great, but it's not enough. Good luck to you, and we're always here at The Lonely Entrepreneur.